righty. Good evening, everybody. It is 6 o'clock, so I'm calling the meeting of the Londonderry Master Plan Steering Committee to order. If we could all rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Be seated.
Jeff, when you
All right.
talk, can you speak into the mic,
Yeah.
just so I can hear you better?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
Deb,
We're
if-
gonna have a miracle here.
I'm not joking.
so we have a lot of all-stars in the audience today, but I want to recognize our new town manager, Sean Mulholland. So thank you for, for enjoying and kind of getting up to speed. Looking forward to working with you many years to come. So thank you. All right, and first order of business is approval of our April meeting minutes. We did not have a meeting in May, so does anyone have any edits that they would like to bring forward? I will entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Sean, second by John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Extensions? Those minutes from April are now approved. In keeping with tradition of this meeting, public comment will be incorporated throughout as topics kind of arise, but if anyone would like to kind of address the committee right now, please feel free to do so.
Hi.
Hi, Christine.
For those that don't know me, I'm Christine Perez. I'm one of your state representative. I've been there all day. We passed both the budgets. The first budget failed. HB1 failed. They brought it back and it passed. HB2 passed by one vote. That was Sherm Packard who broke the tie. Anyway, that being said, and I will tell you up front, I did not vote for either of them. Okay. I've never been to one of these. I really didn't have a keen interest, not that I don't think it's very important before, but with all that's been going on at the State House with all these housing bills, all these zoning bills that have been going through in the name of affordable housing, I got very interested in what was going on. And then in view of the fact that it came to light that there's over 2,300 units being either just built, being built, or approved to be built in Londonderry, so the zoning and then this. And then I happened to watch a planning board meeting where I was very concerned about the fact that it was brought to light that I was here through the whole Woodmont thing, the years and years of that. And it was my understanding, and I believe the understanding of a lot of people in town, that we were going to have restaurants and we were going to have stores and things. And then listening to this planning board meeting, I heard one of our former town manager and developer say that, well, the restaurants really want to face 102, and they want to be faced on 102, access on 102. So we have to get, I'm not quoting this word for word. So we have to get all this residential in so that they know there'll be a lot of people there to support their restaurants and their stores. That concerned me greatly because wasn't that all checked out before it was presented? I mean, it was presented as all this stuff, and now I'm hearing that it obviously was not something that was, you didn't go to restaurants and said, we're going to build here, and gee, would you think you might want to be there, or stores that you might want to be there? So based on those things, and I guess what I'm looking for is, I know you have a mission statement, but I'm really, and I apologize, I can't stay, I've been gone since 7. But I really wonder if you have a vision for what you want Londonderry to look like. One of my concerns about all the zoning bills that we had come through, twofold. One, I don't believe Londonderry with 27,000 people is the same as maybe Croydon that has 800 people. I don't believe that one size fits all when you're talking about zoning. I don't think one size fits all when you're talking about housing and residential. I just think that, so I have a concern about what our master plan is looking for. As far as affordable housing, nobody's going to build a $300,000 house in Londonderry. It's just not going to happen. And I've brought that up at some of the zoning meetings. I mean, even if you say nobody can have a lot bigger than half an acre, even in Londonderry, they're not going to put a $300,000 house on a half-acre lot in Londonderry when they can put an $800,000 house. So my concern with this master plan is, what do we want Londonderry to look like? Not little towns, cities. Do we want to just be an extension of Manchester? Because that's, is that what we're going for? So I guess what I'm looking for is what the vision of this master plan is. And, if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. But that's really all I wanted to say, and I appreciate the fact that you're here and what you're doing. Unfortunately, I cannot stay, though. Yeah,
Just really,
yeah.
nope. Really quickly, thank you. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
those comments. We've been working on our vision statement for the last 6 months, and we have a draft that we're going to be discussing this evening.
Okay,
as
I
well.
wish I could stay. I
No
can't.
worries at all. That draft is available. It's available online. It was attached to the agenda this
Okay.
afternoon. I'll ensure that you definitely have that copy
Thank
there,
you.
so we can definitely have that conversation.
Okay.
I think it's important that you do bring those items up. We definitely have had conversations that touch upon all of that, and I think we attempted to get all of that information into that vision statement, into kind of that mission statement that you'll kind of read
Yep.
within that. That also was contributed to the data that we did collect for that.
Okay.
Never once this committee has said that we would be an extension of Manchester.
Well, that was just an
No,
example.
no worries, no worries. But I just want to ensure that that is
Yeah.
we're unique. We want to
Right.
keep our uniqueness. We want to and it's tough. I agree. No one's going to build a 300,000 if it doesn't make economic sense to a developer. They're most likely not going to
Right.
build it. And I feel that us as a committee have. And please, anyone, in the moment, you can definitely comment or say that I'm wrong. But we're unique, and we want to definitely try to keep that uniqueness in using this master plan as our guide, so we can make those zoning
Okay.
changes, so we can really have those conversations, so we can contribute to our strategic plan
Yep.
that's upcoming.
Unfortunately, it's difficult to stay unique. And, everybody says, well, we're a Dillon Rule state, so therefore we don't have local control. Baloney. We do have local control. We have an umbrella of the state, and then we can work within that for what is best for our town. Okay, right? My concern, and a lot of concerns about a lot of people, was you put these zoning laws in that are not appropriate for us, for Londonderry. I actually got told, I live in a development, and I was in a chat, and I said, well, I live in a development and one of the main reasons I live in a development and have for multiple years is I want to protect the value of my home. And I was told that was immoral. That was immoral. So, I mean, that's the type of thing we're up against. But fortunately, one size doesn't fit all, so that's it. Martha, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious to ask you, since you're a resident and also a representative, what is your vision? What do you see? What would you like to see?
What would I like to see?
Yes.
Okay, this will be the resident, not the rep, okay?
Okay,
I would like to see Londonderry slow down, and take a look at, I mean, we have hundreds of apartments being built. I have every intention, I am hoping that this town puts in impact fees. I've been saying that for over a year. It's not just one new counselor mentioning it. I've been saying it for over a year. I intend to put in an impact fee bill next year that will expand, and I have tons of support for it because of the zoning bills, to expand the impact fees because they don't just impact structures. I mean, we have so many. I mean, there was a nice article that Betsy McKinney put in the paper. We made a lot of money on these impact fees, you know. So my view is to slow things down, take a look, keep it more as a town as instead of a city, and look more at like what we need for more perhaps recreational offerings for the children that are here now or the children that are coming here, and look at more what we can provide for the diversity of our residents. We have a lot of seniors. We have, 15 senior housing areas? I just don't want to see us be Manchester. I don't want to see us be wall-to-wall apartments. And the traffic is a huge issue because I've said it many times. We have 199 units being put in 1 mile. 1 mile, 199 units in 1 mile on Gilchrist. How did that happen? They said they had a traffic study. Well, when did they do it? Did they do it in the middle of the night?
I don't know.
So those are my concerns. I want to see more development of what we need in the town as opposed to expanding the town.
So, Mr. Chair, I have just a quick comment, couple quick comments, really quick. So we're not supposed to be having a conversation necessarily during public comment, but one is the bills that are being proposed in Concord. Some have already failed, some are still working their way through. Will be statewide, as you said, Christine.
Yeah, let me tell them, the bills are done. If we did it today, it's done. Anything that's going to go, we have a couple that will come back in September, but for the
Right, I
most part,
understand.
they're done.
So what I'm saying is that the work that we're doing here, bringing it back to the master plan, could be gravely impacted by these bills.
Right.
Because it would strip away our ability as a community, as a town, to really draft a vision when it's being overridden potentially by state mandates. That's number one.
Right.
Number two, bringing it to local level, there were a lot of comments that were made in the surveys that we did and the survey that we did, and also in a lot of conversations in this committee, I think our chair would agree, about keeping Londonderry and et cetera, and the feel for it. But in reality, when you look at the number of units that are, like you said, already permitted, constructed, or being constructed,
Right.
it would add almost 15% to the population.
17.
Close
And
enough.
that's based on 2, not
Close
2.7.
enough. Just based on what's going on right now over a
Right.
period of only 5 or so years. So I think that plays heavily into what this committee has to look at. Because we can write something like we did 12 years ago, but when you look at that plan, at least in my humble opinion, I wasn't involved in it, a lot of it never happened. So we have to be very realistic.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Bob.
Could I add something, Mr. Chair?
Yes, thanks, Kelly.
So I have the draft vision on the screen for this plan.
Yeah, well, I
And
can't
I
read
just
it.
emailed you all the materials to
Huh?
your email. I just emailed you all the materials.
Perfect. Thank you
You
very
have
much. But the bills don't go through, but we do have a few more bills, and a ton of people are asking Governor Ayotte not to pass a lot of the bills. And but one of the things we run up against is even the Speaker of the House said to me, see, I'm against Kelly Ayotte's bill for no cell phones from the minute you walk in to the minute you walk out, because I was very fortunate to get the Londonderry School District to put in a very good cell phone bill, because I said, I'm going to put a bill in, that I'd rather have you did it, and they did a very good job, that local control. But you even have the Speaker of the House saying, we are not local control, we're a Dillon rule state. But again, we've got to look past that, because we were given the right to do our own zoning multiple years ago, and we need to be able to continue to do our own zoning. So anyway, that being said, thank you. Thanks for your time. Thank you. Thanks for your time. Thanks for sending that to me.
Thank you.
Bye. I have company at home.
All right. Anybody else before we jump into?
Jeff,
Yes, go ahead, Deb.
I just thought of something, since I'm not gonna be able to speak again. Kelly,
No,
could
you
you,
can,
well, the vision statement, I just wanted to,
sure.
I guess my question is, I saw the statement, she had it up there, and I like it. I just wanna know, is it gonna break down how you intend to get there? So the first, oh God, there we go.
Maybe,
Do you see
Yeah,
where
I
it
don't-
says Londonderry values, the la la la? And I see that we're saying that, and that's great. But
Right.
in there, are we gonna break it down as to how you're gonna do these things that are in your vision? Do you have, and does that vision gonna have a breakdown of 5-year, 10-year, 20-year? Well, the master plan only goes 10 years, so 5 and 10-year kind of steps to keep us in line. Like, what are we gonna do?
What are the milestones?
Yeah, like
that-
how are we going to be able to do this? I mean, it's great to say it. It sounds wonderful, but how do you maintain the heritage? How are you going to do the open? Like, what triggers are you going to put in this that are going to help maintain it? Do you know what I'm trying to say? That was it. I don't know if you're going to let people talk into this, so that's why I wanted to say it now.
Yeah, no, individuals will have the opportunity to come in as
Oh,
our
Thank you.
conversation kind of progresses.
I'll let you continue your meeting. I'm sorry.
No, you're absolutely fine. And I think that's a good segue into our next topic area of reviewing kind of the draft chapters here. And I just want to kind of, we have had quite a bit of committee discussion, on this, and in light of kind of the opportunity for us to kind of brew on this and percolate it. As you can see, I need coffee because I'm using coffee terms. I definitely want to kind of, get a temperature check on where the committee is with these chapters. Sylvia and Kelly, if you feel free to
If
kind
you
of.
don't mind, Mr. Chair, did you want to recap what the small group discussed? At the last meeting, you had mentioned that
I
a small
do.
group was gonna get
Yes,
together
and
to
yeah,
review the
thank you, Kelly.
feedback.
Yeah, so a small, kind of working group did meet just to kind of elicit additional comments that were received. What we did is we went through those comments, reviewed them. We did also map those comments to what the data that we've collected. So if we remember, this data here was collected last just almost a year ago now. Geez, through surveys we had a 5% response rate from our town. Other events and such like that. There was definitely some comments in there that we were able to tie back to this draft plan, and I hope that that you'll be able to kind of see those. There's also some comments like I think Martha, you brought up the planning board should work with the conservation commission a bit more. That's already in our design review, so we do receive kind of design comments from the the conservation, committee, the conservation commission, sorry, Martha. But, so that was an example of a comment that we were just kind of more or less didn't, didn't feel that need to include. We do, Bob, there, you did bring up, and Christine did bring up, these conversations about the, about how to integrate legislation that hasn't been enacted yet into a master plan. If I can summarize that, I think the concern there is the local control aspect. I have my personal feelings on that, and those personal feelings are not, very much not really kind of. Let me back up. When I look at the master plan, I'm putting from a developer standpoint, I'm seeing this, I'm the developer as a stakeholder, I'm seeing this plan, what's the information there? I don't necessarily, and please, and maybe this is the time for the discussion, and let's probably not dance around it. I don't want this to become a political document. I want this to become a sustainable document that we're able to bring forward so we can change the zoning laws, or zoning regulations, so we can change, the other regulations that really probably no one on this committee has had any input into designing them initially. But knowing that, with the town staff that we have now, with Sean and, Kelly and, and the team that Sean's putting together, we really have a great opportunity to ensure that Londonderry stays the way of a very, a small town feel that has those services that its residents kind of expect. It's a long-winded answer to kind of like that situation, but I really do want to kind of, I'm just going to flat out say, I don't think we need to, and I don't think we should be including any statements that saying we maintain local control in this document.
Does somebody suggest that?
Would you mind if I just said a couple of things? 'Cause
Yeah,
I
please.
think it's important to talk about the process that we went through. So at the last steering committee meeting, which I think was in April, the committee agreed that you would take the comments from any and all committee members that was in response to the initial draft chapters, that being vision, land use, housing, and regional.
And demographic
Thank you, and demographics.
and land use.
I said land use.
Sorry.
And that, you received that feedback from several committee members, and it was really good feedback. It was a lot of feedback. So the committee then agreed to create a small working group, which was Jeff, Counselor Faber, Lynn, and I feel like I'm forgetting somebody possibly.
Jake?
Maybe Jake. So that group went through all of those comments, every single one, line by line. I was on that call, and Sylvia was as well. And we really analyzed them, again, as a group, that small group, to make sure that either A, acknowledging whether or not they were captured already in our draft chapters that we had at that time, or B, whether or not it was appropriate to consider at all. And I think that's kind of what Jeff was getting at when he was just talking about whether or not we should consider proposed legislation that isn't enacted yet. So we went through that exercise, is my point, and it was a thorough exercise, and I think that that group did a good job of trying to make sure that we capture everyone's input, everyone being those people on this committee. And that's how we got to what you're going to go through tonight as these final draft chapters, if that's what we're calling them. So I just wanted to point that out because I think it's important to note that we did actually go through those comments. And I remember you, Rob and Martha's comments specifically, literally line by line to evaluate and analyze them and how, like I said, if they were already included or if there was a need to include them at a higher degree, I guess, than maybe they were already included in, again, those initial drafts. So I just wanted to acknowledge that we did go through that. And I thought that that small working group did a good job of that. And if, I don't know if Lynn's not here, Jake's not here, but if either of you, Sean or Jeff, had anything else that you wanted to add to that conversation that we had had.
Just say I'd agree with Jeff's comments. I think when you get to pending legislation, it's very tricky. You don't know really what you're dealing with. If you follow legislation at all, it gets amended countless times. Even through the course of today, throughout the budget, all the things that went through went back, forth, all over the place. So you can't try to focus a long-term document on a short-term thing. And something like local control, which is a popular thing lately in discussion, isn't a long-term thing. It's a very broad thing. We could get into, if we get 3 years from now, we start talking about environmental controls, and we as Londonderry want to, let's say we get a bad batch of people and we want to just bulldoze over wetlands, and the state says no. That could run into a problem with what we put into our master plan because we are going to prioritize local control versus state control. So it's conceptually a hard thing to fit a broad-based concept into a document that we're trying to look at a long-lasting zoning.
So, Mr.
Vision
Chair,
for the future.
also go ahead, Sean, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I don't think I was one of those people who said that. I just want to point out only one thing that I said when Ms. Perez was up, and that is that we have to look at our master plan. It's a Londonderry master plan. We're working on Londonderry master plan, not a statewide master plan, right? As far as I know. So the only point about these pending legislations, whether the governor signs them or not or whatever, that's a different situation. I'm not sure who would have said that to put those words in it. It wasn't, I know it wasn't me, I don't think. But when we talk about our local, that's going to happen. If they pass these bills and the governor signs them, it would have, as I said earlier, a major impact on our master plan because we would lose a certain amount of control over our vision for our town, right? But as far as our master plan is concerned, our master plan would dictate our vision for the town, and then we would work with the town administration to make sure that ideally our zoning code and our PUDs ordinance, supports that vision, right? Mm-hmm. So I think they're two very different things, and I agree that we can't worry about what hasn't passed or what hasn't been approved. But if it does get approved, I think before we finish this master plan, we're gonna have to look pretty carefully at that, right? But they're two very different things, Mr. Chair. So I agree. We shouldn't put that local versus state. I mean, that's. Sean mentioned wetlands. Well, that's a typical thing. That's either statewide or in larger ones by the feds, by Corps of Engineers. So we have no control over that, right? Other than what we have in our ordinances and our prescriptive regulations for wetlands. That's a great example, Sean, right? So I just wanted to clarify for our chair that, I mean, in my mind anyways, two very different things, right? So I would agree. We don't want to put that language in the document. Having said that, this master plan is absolutely a political document. So I think to say it's not, it's just not realistic. But it is. But I agree with you, Jeff. Mr. Chair, I should say. Sorry.
I think we can have we can have a vision, and that
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with the vision.
Correct.
But know that any point in time, it has to stay within the parameters of law and regulation. And those laws and regulations change, and we just have to use the same vision, but apply it selectively.
The only problem with viewing this as a political document is when this goes through a court case with someone and on why you did or didn't do things. Some of the RSAs say you refer back to your master plan on how these things came. Do you develop? Does it comply with your master plan? Does it not comply with your master plan? So it's got to be a very fact-based document, not political from a court perspective gets viewed a little different than if we just do this is a great zoning document that we went through and we did from an engineering disciplined perspective rather than political just implies a little bit more. So that's why I want to be careful with that language.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Being a fact-based kind of document, maybe that's the lens that we should absolutely look at this through. And the data that we've collected has been, said a few times this evening, has come from our resident surveys, our resident outreach efforts, and so forth. So we want to definitely ensure that it is kind of, fact-based.
Can I add it to your point, Mr. Chair?
Absolutely.
So when we're talking about data, we're talking about kind of two sets of data. The data, if you will, that we collected through the resident surveys like you just highlighted, but we're also talking about hard data, if you will, which we got from the Regional Planning Commission based on regional data, which is all derived mostly from the US Census Bureau. So it's coming from the same data source so that it's, comparable across the board, across the document, to Londonderry and to this region. So I think it's important to note that it's not just based off of the survey questions that we got, it's also based off of data that's
Right.
used across the board in this area, in this profession, so.
It might be beneficial to add, and thanks, Kelly. I think that's definitely an important call out, and actually something that I've been reviewing a lot here. I love that each of these documents, each of these tables do have sources. I think if we're able to kind of put a glossary in of like what is IPUM's National Historic Geographic Information System, where do they get their data? Obviously, Sylvia, where you and your team, where your data is derived from, what are those sources there? I think that's going to be really important for the residents who kind of review this, for the developers who review this, to kind of have that, setting the table there for that understanding. Obviously, we have data sources from the New Hampshire Office of Planning and Development. I think that would just add more clarity to this document, and apologies for not catching that earlier. Okay.
So are we gonna talk about this document?
I think we're in a good place to talk about this now. Sylvia or Kelly, did you have any comments before we kind of bring it back to the committee, just to kind of like from the overall shape of how you're seeing this document?
Just a couple of things, since we have our new town manager here, and I just wanted to sort of go through what we've done to get here, similar to what Kelly has done. So first of all, Sylvia Von Auwelak, Executive Director from Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, just helping to guide this effort. So we've talked about the survey that was done starting last summer and wrapped up in September. I think there were something in the ballpark of 1,300 participants in that, so it was really, really well response. We had several outreach efforts. We went to town across the street to the high school during one of the votes. We were at the
Old Home Day.
Senior Fair.
Old Home Day. We went to the senior center, so there was a lot of outreach.
Senior Fair, too.
We've had multiple committee discussions, taking in a lot of, feedback. And so what you're seeing today, we had several workshops to really discuss the vision. Sorry, I'm going to look back. It's been a while. The guiding principles, and then, of course, the chapters and the recommendations. And there's been a lot of input, and so that's what we have in front of you. We took the feedback from the committee, we incorporated probably 90% of that. And as Kelly has pointed out, some of that feedback was discussed and thought that it was either incorporated or that the master plan wasn't the document to incorporate that, or that it didn't sort of jive with what we heard from the participants, the 1,300 plus or minus. So that's what you have here. What we heard from the beginning is that Londonderry wanted this as a usable document, not something that was going to be 500 pages and no one would ever look at it. So you have a relatively slim document. You have some hefty chapters here, land use and housing. But what we wanted to really make it something that any resident or a board, land use board, could easily pick this up and look at those recommendations to see if, whether it's a project, a proposal, was in line with the master plan. So I think that's what you've got in front of you. And so I just wanted to lead with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, Mr. Chair, the purpose or the goal of this evening, at least as I understand it, is to get any additional feedback from the committee on these chapters, and then make a decision as to whether you're in agreement with bringing this to the planning board as a general update, just with respect to these chapters.
I also will throw in a reminder to the group. So initially, when we started, I think Jake had suggested we could do a master plan in 6 months. So we know as a regional planning commission that doesn't typically happen, and we had hoped 1.5 years. So I think it'll take closer till, I'm hoping we can wrap this up by March. That's my new estimate to Kelly. I've shared that with Kelly and probably with Jeff. I forget now. It's been a while. And so ideally, yes, Kelly's absolutely right, that this group agrees it's ready for the planning board to look at this, whether they want to adopt it or wait to all the chapters are done to adopt the entire thing. What we want to avoid is going back and revising this every time we have 3 new chapters. Ideally, we adopt this. Because as we all know, planning board, zoning board, conservation commission, all the land use boards, they have new people coming in. So let's say the planning board maybe has 1 or 2 or 3 new people come on. They'll have never seen this. And then in 6 months when that happens, or 1 year, they're like, well, I've never seen this. We're going to start all over. So I want to avoid that. We've been part of that kind of process. It's painful. I know that Londonderry wanted this quick. They wanted it to be up and running so that they could already start using this. So that when there is something coming down the pike and in front of the planning board, they can say, well, the newly adopted housing chapter says X, Y, Z. It's in line with that, or something else. So ideally, tonight, we say, yes, this is ready for planning board. The other thing we have for you, hopefully to look at, we want to start actually considering the next step with the next survey. So I do have that also for you all to look at. I know Kelly's had a chance to look at that. And so that would, ideally, we would have started in July 1. I'm hoping now that, depending on when the planning board can see it, we start August 1st with that. So that would be ideal, so that we can wrap up that survey by, I'd say, end of September, maybe mid-October. And so that would be ideal, because we want a similar turnout. It might not be as exciting of a turnout. Usually you see a sort of a less participation, but we do have on this one economic development, transportation, and natural resources are the next 3 chapters. So not as maybe hot topics as housing and land use, but still, transportation, a lot of people have things to say about that. All right.
You know, I'm sorry, I just realized that this was sent out at 10:30 this morning. I was in meetings all day, so I haven't even read this thing. I mean, it came out this morning. I was asking Martha if she got it, and then she showed me an email. It came out this morning, so whatever. But I haven't had a chance to even read it,
So
so.
we're gonna go through it?
So,
Nothing really here is crazy new. I mean, you all have seen this in the past, but, you know, if you want to have we can wait till next month. It's up to
I don't- I'm
you.
not s-
I don't know the planning board schedule. It's your
I'm not saying we
comfort
should
zone.
wait, but
I'm certainly just letting you know, plus, Bob, the planning board will also want time to look at this. Just, they're not gonna wanna adopt it in one meeting.
From a logistical standpoint, Sylvia, so I'm fine with March. I think I did propose at one time January, but I'll concede to March if that is the timeline that we want to kind of get to.
We're aiming for that.
Aiming
yes.
for. So and I kind of liked what you were saying about the, do you guys have anything? Sorry, there was just some crosstalk over here.
I'm saying that I didn't really have that much chance to look at this either, that I don't, you talked about a little bit what happened in the small group. I guess you said that comments that were made were handled in other ways. I just feel a little bit
Sure.
unprepared to
Sounds good.
adopt.
With that though, the data itself is going to be different from chapters 1 to 3, where the first 3 chapters and then the second chapter. So I think from a logistical standpoint, adopting it in different sections does make sense whenever this committee feels ready to adopt it.
Maybe adopt is not the language that would be of comfort to Martha. What we are wondering is it ready for you to move this to the planning board for their next review? So I don't think I'm prepared for you to adopt this either tonight, Martha, and I'm hearing what you're saying. And I don't think Bob's comfortable either. I wouldn't be
I haven't read it
comfortable.
yet.
I wouldn't be comfortable if I had gotten it 10 in the morning. So all I'm asking, is this ready to move for the planning board to have a look? Because they may have comments. They may want to say, we don't like this, we like that, this is missing. So that kind of feedback from the planning board. Is it ready for their input?
I mean, I think
deal with it, I guess. But
this
read it,
document.
It's hard to answer that when you haven't really read the thing.
Well,
This is the third time. I mean, this.
Okay.
like I said, this
but I
is
just,
not,
like, I'm fine.
I don't wanna
I'm
hold
fine
up the,
waiting
I
it.
don't wanna hold up the process.
I'm fine
Jeff.
with waiting another month. That's fine. But I just want to ensure that this isn't the first time that we've seen these chapters as well. So I just want to kind of clarify that for the community. This isn't the first time we've seen
I
this.
understand, but you made changes to it.
But, but changes were made.
I said I'm okay with giving another month because I just got this document earlier this week as well. So
Well, like today.
so April, when we last met, as you recall, we had already gone through multiple
all right,
workshops.
listen, let's not.
Hold, Jeff, so already what was agreed upon was the vision and all of the guiding principles. None of that has changed. Also, what was agreed upon were all the recommendations. None of that has changed. There was an element to land use that Kelly wanted to include, and you may recall from the last working session in April, there was a question about the zoning portion. That was updated. It's verbatim from what came out of the zoning. So, and very minor, there was some clarification as requested on some of the
Data sources.
data
and
sources.
numbers.
Yep, some of the numbers, what some of the definitions of some items were, and that was incorporated. So none of the meat, which are really the recommendations, none of that changed.
So, Mr. Chair, if we can just look at those items, I definitely don't want to hold things up.
Right,
Maybe we can make a decision on that tonight. It wouldn't take very long to go through those. they sound pretty minor, right?
Well,
So,
and succinctly, I think what you were trying to say before is just because this goes in the planning board does not mean this is finally done and over. This is just the planning board to get a chance to look at it. They're going to discuss it. There's, yeah. So the feedback won't be closed because it's gone to the planning board.
but to our chair's point, I mean, like I said, if we just go over those items
Yeah.
quickly, I can't speak for Martha, but I'd be okay with it. You know, it'd be nice to get it earlier, but we didn't, so that's that. So let's forget about that. So let's talk about those, and Mr. Chair, I'd be okay with, you know, if they're fine, you know.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, John.
was there a list or notes from the breakout group on what changes were discussed and what changes were incorporated that you could share out and we could kind of blow through this whole thing real quick? Are there minutes from those meetings or anything that would say, hey, this was an item, we discussed it, this was an item, we rejected it? Just shoot down the list, bullet point list.
I think that for succinctness, the changes might be if we have, because if it didn't affect this document, we might get off into the weeds, especially for the amount of time we've got.
So I don't have those notes in, and I apologize for not having them in front of me. If that makes folks more comfortable, I'll get those notes out and we can review them. We'll have another kind of month to do so before we, you know, make any recommendations to the planning board.
Mr. Chair, if we get those and we have a chance to read the Word document that came out, can we just email the chair saying that we read them, we were okay with them, or any sort of very minor comments to keep the ball rolling? I personally am not for postponing it, but
I agree.
I'm not sure that it's okay to do that, but I'd be happy to look at it, you know, early next week. I may have something over the weekend. I have a wedding, but, you know, keep it going if it's okay. If it's, you know, okay to do that.
We did get pushed back by missing last month, and that,
Yeah.
you know, that was too bad. I wish we could have found another day that we could have met sooner than a whole month went by,
But is it okay to do that by our charge, so to speak, our charter or whatever? That we can give you the comments once we get to read the document? Is that okay?
I don't think this is a vote. I think it's, so I think we're not doing a vote by mail. So I think that would make this.
Yeah, we just give our input,
Yes.
which may be actually nothing, or maybe a couple minor things. We're not voting, correct?
Yep.
Just so that I'm clear, though, it would be input on the notes from that meeting.
In reading the Word document that we
Reading
got
the
this
Word
morning,
document
They just
and-
want a chance to
both
read
of
it.
those things.
which you can probably easily do by early next week, you know. I
Exactly.
can't speak for everybody here, but
Yeah, let me, I mean, I'm fine with that. Obviously, the notes that I have are in my Jeff language, which is quite grammatically correct. But I do want to ensure that, you know, that
I think we're getting two things
Set
crossed
the
because I think we're talking about trying to bring the changes up so we can view them real time here. And now I view it's a much better solution to have them actually have time just to read it because they just got it this morning.
Yep.
And you wouldn't have to get all that together. They just need time to read it so they can get back to us early next week.
not a lot of time either,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
a couple of
but-
days.
But yeah, some time to actually go it
Is
over.
it clear in the document, again, I haven't even opened it because I actually don't have the town email on my phone, it's on my laptop. Is it clear as to what the changes were made, that we can tell? Are they highlighted in some way? I don't know. No?
it doesn't,
Well,
Okay.
in the document you're seeing up there, that incorporated all the things, but I have it in track changes.
Yeah.
And, I don't know,
That would be awesome.
and so,
Yeah, I was just seeing if I could drop it in here, because it's on my,
so Kelly's trying to get that on the screen now, so you can see. There's nothing trying to hide here.
No,
just-
no, we're not saying you are.
You know, no, I'm just letting you know, it's
saying you
all
are.
there, you know, Jeff asked for the latest version, so I just took the version they already had and just incorporated everything and got rid of the track changes, because it's harder to read with comments and all of that.
Mr. Chair, while everybody's looking for the document, ideally with the changes, and frankly, I did read this a couple times today, and I have no issues with the document as it stands, but having dealt with contracts of different kinds over the years, I don't put my name on the bottom of anything that somebody says has been changed unless I actually see what the changes are. And I'm looking over at my lawyer over there to make sure that she's probably advised me to do it that way, okay? So, you know, that would be great, but by the same token, to keep things moving, I think it's gonna probably take some time before you get this on a planning board agenda. Maybe you could get that scheduled with them under the assumption that once everybody sees the changes here, we'll probably be able to move this thing forward pretty rapidly.
Is it, Mr. Chair, is that considered a vote if we, I'm being genuine, is this, let's say we get the document with the change track, because we do it all the time in my business too. And honestly, it would probably take 30 minutes to read through
Right.
that stuff.
Right.
And any notes that you might share, you know, from your working group, it's a half an hour's worth of stuff. If we send it to you and we say something like, we reviewed it, we're okay, I'm okay with this, being myself, I'm okay with it, so I'm fine with this being forwarded to planning board, is that considered a vote? I'm being serious, is that considered a vote or just a suggestion? A
this committee-
recommendation?
This would be,
This committee is we were seeking to have this committee make a recommendation to send this to the planning board, just these chapters before you.
Correct. So I guess what I'm asking is because we're not a formal meeting, we're doing it by email, is that somehow an issue? And I'm being genuinely serious.
Yeah.
So you can't.
Our town
have-
manager
you
has-
can't- You can't have a group email or a group
No, we send it
anything
to the
in which
chair.
you're interacting.
But
You
I-
need to direct your comments to one person.
Yeah.
Right, the
To
chair,
Jeff.
to Jeff.
That's where that's where we send yay or nay.
I guess I still have a question of how are you proposing to actually do this?
Our town manager had her
Yeah.
his hand up.
let's take a step back.
Did you want to acknowledge?
I
the
do.
town manager?
Yes.
Mr. Town Manager. Sorry to bring you up.
So I would just offer a suggestion only, because obviously I'm here in no official capacity. So my suggestion would be if the concept is that you take a vote now to proceed and send this to the planning board, absent anybody emailing the chair and saying, I object to it being sent. That's one way to do that, because you will have taken the vote here in session in public that's recorded. And if there's any issues, then you can hold back, and you're authorizing the chairman to hold back sending that document to the planning board because you want a further read on it. And that way, it's all done in public and there's no issues. And if one member objects, then it just goes back onto the next agenda during that time, because we realize on the record here that some members have not had an adequate opportunity to read all the documents thoroughly. And they may have other questions, and if that's the case, that's one way to do that, and that way we are above board and the public has view of our activities. Just a suggestion if you wish to do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, that also would handle my concern with what Rob was saying, because you might say yay to everything, but you might say nay, and how are you gonna handle it? I think we just heard the solution.
Yeah.
Sure.
When is the next planning board meeting?
August 6th. Sorry, July
July.
9th. But that agenda's published.
Okay, so that's,
Sorry,
so
way
it's not gonna be, so it would be the August meeting.
Yes, that's why I was saying August 6th would be the more reasonable meeting to place this on.
Okay.
So one thing you could do to make it easy is say, yes, move it to the August 6th meeting, have a July meeting before that. That gives you, whether that's 3 weeks or whatever the time frame may be. In the meanwhile, you've said, yep, we're gonna put slate a spot for this. If at the July meeting you say, Sylvia, no, I don't like it, you forgot this, or the group, there's a majority of you that say, now, you know what, whatever, or yay, I love this, let's keep it on the agenda. You have that July meeting to make the decision for the up or down.
I think that's a great idea.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense. Yep. I mean, yeah, okay.
And in the meanwhile, I will send to Jeff, and I think, Jeff, you already have it actually, but the version with all the track changes. But I'll get you that because I didn't save over that. I left it as it was. And we'll get everyone that. Jeff will send that out. And I can do that tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
All right? So you'll have like 3.5 weeks or whatever you need. Because
Half an hour.
I get that.
Half an hour.
Yeah,
That's all we want. There was a
Absolutely.
meeting with that small group. We never heard what the results were of the small group.
Absolutely.
I feel like we got left out of a,
No, and no one likes to feel left out. I'm hearing that, Martha, and I get that. I totally understand. But I think this is a good a process moving forward.
yeah, definitely.
And also then at the August meeting, I wonder, Jeff, if that would make sense. Everyone will have had also the survey questions, so we can also decide at that meeting if that's something you also want to suggest to the planning board to authorize the next survey. So you could also put that on the August 6th agenda for them. And you can
So
do the
that in
yay.
July as well.
Yeah, and then we could do whatever editing we need to do at the next July meeting.
I think that's a great idea.
I like
So we can all go home now.
Yeah, that's a good plan.
I like that too.
All right.
I'm sorry.
I
hope you-
appreciate the, I
totally
do
understand.
appreciate the conversation, and I do think that is the right approach. And there are notes to that, meeting that do need to be kind of shared. So, and we'll ensure that those notes are available as well. All right, so next steps here. Sylvia, you're sending me, and then either myself or Alicia, mainly because Alicia has the master plan steering committee
Mailing list.
mailing list, will send that out. We already have the questions for the next survey that are, ready to that we'll review next month as well. We'll have some, more time to kind of review those. We'll tentatively put the presentation to the planning, this plan to the planning board for the August 6th meeting. Our next scheduled master plan meeting is, let me just pull it up here, July
That's what I had.
July 17th?
July 17th, the third
third one?
Thursday. Does anyone have any conflicts that week? I know
It's
that,
in my calendar, shockingly. Jeff, not sure you didn't hear me. I said it's on my calendar, shockingly.
fantastic. Barring, so, July 17th, we'll come prepared to, have a proper discussion on these chapters, and know that this is available and, the public does have, access to these documents as well, so.
Mr. Chair, the survey that's gonna come up, the second survey, right? Are we gonna, to make it again the more productive meeting on the 16th or so, whatever, 17th? Will we be able to see those in advance or just in real time at the meeting or?
It's already up.
It's already up?
The survey
The
questions
big
were,
questions are
They're in
already-
the email that you got this morning.
Oh, okay. I didn't see the email, sorry. Martha showed me on her phone, so I take that back.
yep, so the survey questions are on the, are in the email that were received this morning. And and they'll be also attached to the email that you'll receive tomorrow.
Perfect.
All right.
Sorry, I didn't see that email. I'm
No, you're
sorry.
good.
And just so I'm clear, Mr. Chair, are you sending that out, or are you expecting staff to send that out? I'm happy to do it.
I'd like for staff to send it
Okay.
out. I'll have a note, though, ready for the committee, if that's definitely okay. And the reason I'm
Please.
saying that is because the master plan steering list includes everybody
Yep.
that should be included on that. All right. Anything else?
I actually have comments.
Oh, perfect, thanks.
On the plan. Going through this, we refer to responsible growth and sustainable development. And I'm wondering if we could have an appendix to the document with definitions of those things, as well as an explanation of what the HOP grant is. Those aren't things, like HOP grant, I had to look that up. I didn't know what it was. And I think with all the fun we have with developers, when we ask about affordable housing, and they say define affordable housing, let's put those definitions in there so we know, we all know what we're talking about. And I just happened to ask AI what the definitions were, and they came up with pretty good response. And then the other thing, on page 7, there it says Londonderry projected population. Back in May, there was a letter to the editor in the paper that quoted this actual statistics for Londonderry that are way more than what these projected are. And it concerns me that this graph is so under what is actually happening.
Do you happen to know if there was a data source cited for that?
completely
What
What page is that again? 9?
7.
Seven? I would agree, it's not realistic.
Martin, I'm asking the data question because we had this type of discussion in a prior meeting where we want to be sure that we're having consistent data references throughout the
Right,
document, so.
I have, oh, it's too small, I can't read it. I have the woman's name that she doesn't, I can't read it. Whether or not she's, maybe I can make it bigger. Whoops, whoa, that's bigger.
One thing I can do also,
This whole long, big one here.
Scroll. Oh, Maureen Hardy.
Yeah, but I'm looking, she doesn't say where does she get that information.
Oh, got you. I thought you were looking for the name.
But I think she could probably explain where she got that information.
I guess I'll defer to the committee as a whole as to how you want to approach
But I just,
getting data.
we're quoting data.
well, population projection, right? I mean,
Where we're already above projections. We're above projections for
It-
2040.
It's hard to compare without a data source going, so this one cites it. It's hard to take a look and see what the differences are in between those data, where it came from.
Yeah, I
And
just.
As
I'm
Kelly said,
just-
we're trying to be consistent throughout the document, so that's,
But I think that's a huge discrepancy.
it is, but it's,
And
it's,
it's
It
something
is.
that a developer can come in and say, oh, look, you were stating you
think-
need this many buildings.
Marge, I just want to understand what you're saying. So right now, we know that the population 2023 is 27,530.
Well, this article,
So I'm,
letter to the editor quoted all, the building, all the apartments and homes and dwellings that are in the works right now. They're permitted, they're in process, they're occupied or soon to be occupied. It was a lot, and it kicked it above, way above.
So, I'm just gonna keep reiterating this point because I wanna caution us as to where and how we get data for this master plan, and for anything for that matter that we're publishing as a town-wide document. We wanna be consistent and we want to be accurate, so I'm happy to consider other data,
'Cause
but
it's-
it's more helpful to understand where it's coming from.
I think it's
how
coming
was-
from, from planning, because,
Right, but that's why I asked the question of, is there a source cited or
no.
Well,
something so that I could understand?
Mr. Chair, can I just say, I think that the data's data, but a lot of it is flawed. So we're at 27.5 or whatever we are now, and that's from 2023. If you look at the units that are being either built, have been built in the last 5 years, or are permitted to be built, And if you figure even 1.5 persons per unit, these are multi-bedroom units. They're not like studios, okay? It would add like 3,500 people within a 5-year period. That would put us almost at 31,000 to 31,500, 32,000 by the end of this decade. So that graph, I hate to say, is completely not accurate.
So, all right.
So-
I caution
so-
all of us to not be demographers, because I'm not, but I know that there's more to this, Deb, than just building. So what else is in this? And maybe what I'm gonna ask my staff, who is very well versed on how population projections are created, will be able to share. One thing I know that's also involved, we all know the baby boomers. That bubble is moving. And once that bubble of baby boomers moves, and I'm in that, so in 10, 15, 20 years, that population is declining, which is one.
But the house is gonna be empty and somebody's gonna move in, it's still gonna be populated.
Okay, so
And we're also, the number of children being born is decreasing substantially. So this all goes into population projections. So I'm happy to hear where the person's numbers came from, but let's hear more also about how this was created.
I also caution against my motion here. The data there is different than what was in a newspaper, and different than kind of some committees here perspectives. But are we explaining exactly where we're receiving that data source, how it's being constructed, and such? Because I might be hearing that potential build outs. I might be hearing baby boomers dying or leaving or better pastures. But it's valid, and I think we do want to ensure that
'Cause I think
it's
it
very
was-
clear where the data is coming from to.
and when it was created. I think the issue with this is it was created long enough ago that that the actual has overtaken it.
All right, so you're thinking this is out of date?
Yes.
So I will check on the date for this source. I mean, we see the source, which is New Hampshire Office of Planning and Development. So I'll also check that.
All right, and then my last thing is on page 24. It says Master Plan Steering Committee Proposed Land Use Strategies. I'm concerned about the use of the word ensure. Little past halfway down, it says update open space landscape screening regulations that ensures preservation of forested area. That seems very finite, that either you do or you don't.
Promotes?
I think more like that. And then again, in the last box, ensure new residential developments have on-site. Well, what if they don't want them? What if it's, can you see?
Yeah.
Okay. I
I
think,
think, this is what you're talking about, right, Marge? I have it up.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I think that's dangerous using that word.
I agree.
I think you're right. And do you like promote for
Yes.
both?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Insure is an express warranty. It's a legal term. It's a promise to insure. It's a legal warranty. Promotes is awesome.
Yeah, I think when
That's my opinion anyway.
In our last work session, I think one thing we heard was we want really gung-ho, we want positive, but I think you've hit the nail on that one.
So, just in case anyone's interested, so the source and how that was calculated, the method used for projecting the population of New Hampshire by age and sex is a standard demographic cohort component model. Baseline data inputs provided, and I'll keep this short, so don't worry, it's gonna go on and on. Data inputs provided by components of change analysis. These components include, and there's 4 items, age-specific fertility patterns by age and mother, and the summary total fertility rate that will generate future births, age-specific migration patterns, and summary crude migration rate, which will impact the future number of women of childbearing age and future births. Age, sex-specific survivorship ratios used to age each age-sex cohort to future projection dates, and college enrollment, prison and nursing home residents used to calculate the non-special household population to which the fertility, mortality, and migration rates will be applied. It goes on further, but that's kind of the basic basis of where this all starts, just so people who want to know what went into that number, that's the beginnings of it. You also can go out to the nheconomy.com and it will pop up where these calculations come from if you want to read further. So we know where these numbers come from, what the formulas used to calculate them. If we're going to compare them, we need to know what those other numbers, the source, and how that was calculated. Because I do think it's important how a number is calculated. How did you get there?
You're reading that from the State Data Center
Yeah.
program that's part of the Office of Planning and Development,
Yep.
correct?
Yep.
But, Mr. Chairman, I think we've had some discussions here tonight about things being local. And would that factor in 2,300 new apartments over the next 5 years? And is that a variable that you can't do at that higher level that you have to add in at a local level to calculate population?
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
So
I
it
would
is
agree with,
calculated at
I would agree with that.
They do the projections for the town. So that's where this projection for Londonderry projected population comes from, that exact source. That's where I pulled
Well,
that.
then the next question was, and I don't know the answer to this, is when was that done?
Yeah, and that is a valid question.
Yeah, I would agree with that, you know, the source is the source and all that good stuff, but the reality, that's not the reality. So if we have to justify the numbers because it's a source from the state of New Hampshire or whatever, actuarial numbers, fine, but I personally on the record would say they're not realistic and based on what's happening
What's telling
in
you
this
they're
town.
not realistic?
So it is what it is.
There's data sets. What do you mean?
Pardon me?
There's data sets that have to get you to say it's not realistic. I might see it, and I might agree with you, but I want we should have the data.
I don't know. I mean, the fact that the data's coming from some state agency, but I would just say that I'm not a betting man. I don't even buy lottery tickets, but I'm willing to bet some cash that will be at 35,000 within 10 years. And that's totally not what that shows. So it's just not realistic. The problem with that is it puts something out that is not realistic. It could be vetted by some state agency or some actuarial numbers, but it's not what's happening in southern New Hampshire.
Well, I'm also not going to put
So,
something out.
but
that
I
we're
hear
gonna-
what you're saying. No, I hear what you're saying.
I'm also going to not put something out that we're going to bet in 10 years that we're going to be at.
We're not
35,000.
gonna, yeah, we're not gonna do that, but
I
I'm
know, I
just
wrote that
saying,
down, Bob. I'm going to take that bet.
yeah, take that bet. Take that
What
bet.
bet are
but-
you taking?
But I agree with you, Mr. Chair, that we're not gonna, go on something that's not provable. I agree.
If we're
Well, that kind of ties into, on page 25, it starts off with 9,559 households in Londonderry. Is that number significantly different?
I get, first
I'm
off.
sorry, what page are you on now, Marge?
25 in the blue box.
So the 9,559 households, what is that from? Where did that number come from?
Okay.
Because we've added quite a few this year.
Is that how was that number populated? Is that
I'm
anybody?
going to guess that came from assessing, but I'll get a reference on that.
I thought it came from the census data, the US Census data.
Which is from
How recent is
2020.
Which is from 2020, right?
I'll find out.
But we can confirm that. But I guess my question overall is, at what point do you want to stop,
Right, changing.
right? Like, is it June 26, 2025, or is it
I
December
just was
24?
concerned that there was such a large disparity.
Oh, I see your point, absolutely, but I'm just trying to make sure that we're consistent,
I
right?
think we should try to be as current as we can be if we're working on this now.
I think
To
that
a degree, yes.
I think that being current is impossible.
Right.
I do think that this data is not 100% accurate. But I do think being current's impossible, because even if we took current today,
Yeah,
by the time this thing rolls out,
okay, I get that.
it's already dated. That said, I do think there is, I'm not entirely confident in the data that I see. Would be I guess the best way to put it, you know, to the point of total households, 9,559. Where can we, you know, if that's from a 2000 census data, we're already 5 years behind the 8 ball on that. My question would be, is there a way to get through the town of Londonderry what current occupied units are? Whatever that number is, say it's 9,559. I don't think it is, but say it is, then we can at least take the average household size of 2.7 and get to, number one, what we think is a legitimate, without a census that's 5 years behind schedule, and they're always 5 to 7 to 8 to 10 years behind schedule. You know, we can say, hey, if there's 10,000 households and the average is 2.7 people, that's easy math, that's 27,000, then we can, I feel like we can comfortably say there's 27,000 people in the town of Londonderry. I think that's the most rational way to do it. That said, I'm still not necessarily confident in the number, because 2.7 people, if that was in 2020, it's probably more like 2.4 people now or something, because people just aren't having kids. But I would have a degree of comfortability to say, if we can get what today's household numbers are from the town of Londonderry and multiply it by 2.7, we can comfortably say, okay, as of,
2025.
January of 2025, we're at a population of X. And who knows, maybe that comes to, and I'm sorry, I was late, I put this in my phone for 7 PM, like a knucklehead. Maybe it comes and it shows that we're at an accurate number here. And again, I don't know.
And
I would agree with everybody talking. It is very hard to find a legitimate statistic. I do not think that this is necessarily accurate.
But I think at the time, the assumptions were correct.
Yeah.
This was pre-COVID.
Correct. No, I agree. That's
The
what I'm saying.
world
I
changed
totally agree.
drastically from COVID, and
I
they
totally
had no
agree.
way of knowing that.
And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think this data is accurate on the data that we can,
Right.
the US Census that we work off.
Yeah, no,
you know.
I agree, Mr. Chair. It'll never be totally accurate. It's a shifting sand, right? But those numbers just don't pass the sniff test. And even a 2 people per unit, for those number of units we talked about, that's like 4,500 people in a period of 5 years. And if somebody does move or passes away or moves to Florida, somebody's going to jump into that house. So that's going to be filled up. So that's why I'm going to take Ms. Olak up on her bet. But I'm joking. But I'm serious about this. So I don't know what to say about it. If it was off by what I felt was 1,000 people, to your point, I'd be like, whatever. But in reality, it's off by thousands of people, and that's the problem. And that's frankly, Southern New Hampshire planning knows is an issue that every community in Southern New Hampshire is facing that is exploding in population. I'm not going to name them, but I'm working with some of them right now. So that's a reality. So, but I agree with the chair and the vice chair. It's never going to be totally. It's going to be obsolete in 6 months.
I think it can
Right,
be
Jeff?
more
Right,
accurate.
Mr. Chair?
I think it can be more accurate than it is.
Yeah,
It,
whatever that means.
Right, so.
Whatever
Exactly.
that means.
Yeah. We're building on the census data, 2020 census data, and I think, as a lesson learned, next time we do one of these, let's
do it the year after.
do
the
it the year
census.
after the census. There's that. I'm sure we have data of, households. I think we can, I don't want to put, Kelly, I don't want to put information, words in your mouth here, but I think we can probably get that. I think we can probably explain that in the document, that based on, the occupied households, based on approved plans, I think, yeah, or whatever. Kelly, in a few meetings ago, you did mention, and you probably did mention it 3 times at this meeting here, what's the data point? Is there a data point? It's not approved plans, because an approved plan, they may never
could
build.
Theoretically never build.
Yeah.
We actually
Or
have a
they
perfect
may,
example of that on
build in
Milton.
10 years or what have you.
Yeah.
I think, so, I try and look at this as it, for what it is, meaning the master plan. It's a long-range planning document, and it's important to keep in mind, and I think I mentioned this when we were talking about the regional section, that we have to be able to compare ourselves to some degree to those around us, so that when we are trying to go for grant funds, for example, that we can remain competitive. Part of considering that, at least in my view, is making sure that we have comparable data to point to across the board. So that's part of the reason why the Regional Planning Commission, and chime in if I'm misspeaking, uses these same consistent data points across the board, right? So that you're
I can
comparing
definitely
apples to
understand.
apples. That's
Absolutely.
the point I want to drive home. I understand what you're
I
saying.
can absolutely
And
understand that.
I have no opposition to looking at Londonderry specifically, what data we have available internally that we could provide with respect to total households and population. But I just raised that point because I think it's important for the committee to keep in mind and consider as we keep going through these conversations.
So maybe we could add a supplemental graph using different data, but keep this for the comparison value.
Or make some sort of a note.
I'll defer to you guys. I just want to keep bringing that
No,
forward
I
because
That's a good
agree with
point.
what you're saying of like, I definitely agree and understand with what you're saying.
Because I just think
It
of
does
an
make
example like
sense.
the HOP grant,
Yeah.
for example, when the planning department, when we went through the effort to apply for those funds, one of the tools we used was the master plan and justification for why Londonderry needs it. And we looked at housing chapters and we looked at housing regulations. So all of these types of data points were considered in that process, right? So that's, I just raised that as information for you all to consider as you continue these conversations. They're good conversations to have, absolutely.
Yeah, because the data will never be accurate or up to date to today. If you all start at the same point in time, at least the comparables are accurate in generally the ratio
That's
of
what
where
you're
it's
saying.
at. Yeah,
At least everybody's looking at 2020.
yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
But again, I'm happy to look at what we have internally for information for, if I heard you right, population and household.
Yeah, just try to get an
Total
idea
households.
of, I guess, and
think we
again,
have
I
the
showed up to
total
this very late, but what I'm hearing is the inconsistency or feeling that the population of this is incorrect. And the conversation that's been had since I've been here is, well, how old is the data? I don't think the town of Londonderry will be able to find an average per household, 2.7 people per household, but if we take the data from the US Census that we should be relying on and back into whatever number you would have, then we can at least say, okay, this is what we can, it's somewhere in between what 2020 said and what we have, is the way I kind of see it, so.
Yeah.
I forget how you phrased it, but you did hit on something that was relatively important when you started talking about making sure we are looking at stuff and comparing ourselves to towns much like ours. It emphasizes that growth is an issue across, I should not say an issue, a challenge. Growth is a challenge across really anything south of Concord at this point, and in 20 years, it'll be Loudon sitting at the same spot we are trying to figure out what to do, so. It's my 2 cents.
Okay, do we have a consensus on what we want to do with this data?
Well, what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that on population as well as households, and some of the, like on page 28, that did come from the town of Londonderry. But what we'll do is, one, we'll go through and make sure we have census, whether it's, that we identify the source. Number two, that you'd like to get possibly some updated information from the assessing department. And I'll work with Kelly on that. And I think that's the best we can do. I mean, nobody's gonna wanna wait till 2032 when the 2030 census comes out. Because like Jake has said, you know, the next day it's
Wrong. It's
different.
living. It's real.
So the best we have is either the American Survey, American Community Survey, ACS, which is every 5 years, and that's estimated, or the 2020 survey, and that's the census data. So, but we can get a little bit of information out of assessing as far as, you know, I think, and we've already done that, like the number of households and things like that.
Yeah, Sylvia, I think that's in my opinion, is one member, a good plan. You kind of, definitely a good approach to kind of square these numbers.
Yeah, so we can, you know, so you're gonna see a couple things for the next meeting. For, starting tomorrow, I'll be sending, Jeff and Kelly and Alicia and Kristen the marked up version so that everyone will get that sooner than later. And then the other thing, which may take a little bit longer, I'm gonna guess closer to the end of next week, you'll get something that looks at, we're gonna try to look at make sure all the references are there, which I thought were there, but also to try to get from assessing through Kelly that household number that's more local. I'm also gonna ask Zach, and we all know our Zach, if we can get that, the one that Marge looked at on page 7, if we can get anything more updated than that. I'm gonna guess he got as updated as he could, so we'll at least, at the very least, get a date on this. So we have the source, but what's the date that was created? So we'll have that. But also the other thing with that graph, I think exactly what Sean did, we'll get the information of what goes into putting this together. So that's the other one, if that makes sense for everyone. Okay.
I appreciate that, thank you. All right. Marge, do you have anything else?
No, I'm done.
Okay. All right, so Sylvia kind of gave us our next steps there. In addition to that, you know, we have the survey questions that we'll review in, for our July meeting. The plan thus far is to have this on the planning board agenda. You missed a lot in the first 60 minutes. Have this, you know, on the planning board agenda for the August meetings, the August 6th meeting. And we'll hopefully, you'll continue to have good discussions and continue to get that ready for the planning board.
Mr. Chair, we're meeting on the 17th of July, but do you want us to still send to you and Kelly and Sandra, any of our comments that we might have to the draft? It would be quicker and easier, right? Awesome, okay.
Yep.
Just want to make sure you want that.
I do have to say, one very good table, I think, in here is the job growth comparison, where Londonderry is double the average of the state of New Hampshire, which I feel as though is very accurate based on the commercial growth Londonderry has had. I think that's a very, very accurate comparison.
Phenomenal. Anything else? John?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, comment and a question. Comment, first of all, is it's been an honor and a pleasure as a soon-to-be deceased baby boomer to serve on the committee. Question, it was very interesting today to read
1, 2.
through the draft and the survey, because one of the thoughts it brought to my mind was, is it within the purview of this committee to have discussions about how these things interplay? And by that I mean, there's conservation and there's a lot of discussion about protecting wetlands and how we're gonna fund that. And then there's a whole section on traffic and bike lanes and sidewalks and how are we gonna fund that. And then I was discussing earlier with Sean here about the Lions Hall and how are we, is it within the purview of this committee to prioritize, put a pie chop up, make a recommendation, make a suggestion about, hey, if there are 3 things that come down the pike at the same time, which is the one that gets priority?
I mean, it's a good question there, John. I think. Kelly, go ahead.
Could I just ask, are you asking specifically, or are you saying that you would make a recommendation on those specific items, meaning the Master Plan Steering Committee thinks that the Reverend Morrison House should be, you're just saying generally?
General.
Traffic should have precedence
I follow
over
you now.
housing, or something of that sort.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
when we get into, the action items, if you will, implementation, of the actions that we're considering for each of those chapters, that you could, discuss a prioritization of them. I mean, do you?
I think that would be like in sort of that implementation kind of stage, which will be at the end, because by then you'll have talked about everything. And that's when it gets really tricky, because you all have different interests. And your interests, I think, like you could say what your priority is right now on these chapters that we've talked about. That might change as now we're gonna bring up natural resources. And depending even what happens, let's say I'm gonna go to more doom, John. And not only are we saying goodbye, we're also gonna have a flood, or we're gonna have something else happen. And then suddenly natural resources is gonna be, like top. If Ray was here, maybe water resources would be number 1. And so, yeah, so depending on the time of year and all this, so at the end, I think when we're talking about implementation, and that's probably the shortest chapter, but that's when you all are going to have the difficult job of weighing everything.
But that's always true. You always have intervening things that pop in.
Right.
I draw comparisons on these kinds of questions to household, how you run your household. And, we might plan on buying a hybrid car this year to replace the bomb that my wife currently drives, okay? But all of a sudden, we need a roof, okay? And that doesn't mean you don't prioritize that we still need a car at some point.
Right.
But just, so to answer your question, I do think it's appropriate for this group
Yes.
to
Weigh in on
do
that.
exactly that, and the format for that is the implementation chapter.
Thanks, John. Anything else? Anyone want to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. I'll make a motion.
Motion by Sean.
Second?
I'll second.
Second, I'm going to give it to Martha because she.
Was you here the whole time?
Gotta throw her a bone now.
I appreciate the thoughtful discussion.
Yeah, it was good. Passionate. You missed the.
Yes.
You missed the first 60 minutes of it, but 63.
Very insightful, very meaningful, shows that you're thinking. That is highly commendable. That's shocking.
All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all.